The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in perfect synchronicity with her world falling apart. Olivia Chen stood frozen as Ethan Blackwood's strong hand gripped her wrist, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that only she could hear. "We're not done yet." What had started as a ridiculous dare at her best friend's engagement party had just become the most terrifying, and thrilling, moment of her life. Because the man she'd impulsively kissed wasn't just any billionaire, he was the one who held the fate of her family's struggling business in his hands. And he had recognized her immediately. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more captivating content that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support means everything, and I promise this journey is just beginning. Olivia had always prided herself on being practical, sensible. The responsible daughter who'd put her dreams of becoming an artist on hold to help run her parents' bookstore after her father's heart attack. At 28, she'd accepted that her life would be defined by obligation rather than passion. But something had snapped inside her tonight when her childhood friend Mia, now engaged to a hedge fund manager, had looked at her with pity and whispered, "When was the last time you did something wild, Liv?" The dare had seemed harmless enough in theory. Kiss the most intimidating man in the room. How was she supposed to know that the tall, brooding stranger by the window was Ethan Blackwood, the notoriously ruthless CEO whose investment firm had recently acquired the shopping complex where her family's bookstore was located? The same man who'd sent a coldly worded email last week informing all tenants of imminent redevelopment plans. "You know who I am," he said now, his gray eyes studying her with unsettling intensity as he led her away from the crowded ballroom and onto a deserted terrace. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, the distant sounds of the party fading behind them. I'm sorry," she stammered, mortified. "It was a stupid dare. I didn't realize who you were until after you kissed me and tried to run." His voice was deep, controlled, but with an undercurrent that made her pulse quicken. "That's not how this works, Ms. Chen." Her eyes widened. "You know my name?" A slight smile curved his lips, transforming his severe features into something almost devastating. "I make it my business to know everyone in my business. Including the daughter of Joseph Chen, who runs that little bookstore in the east wing of Westfield Plaza. The one who's been sending me increasingly passionate emails about the cultural significance of independent booksellers." Olivia felt her cheeks burn. Those emails had been professional and articulate, at least the first three. The fourth, written at 2 a.m. after a glass of wine too many, had perhaps veered into territory that could be described as passionate. "Mr. Blackwood, Ethan," he corrected, his gaze never leaving her face. "I think we're well past formalities, don't you?" There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Amusement? Interest? Or was he simply toying with her before delivering the final blow to her family's livelihood? "Why did you kiss me, Olivia?" he asked, his voice softer now. The truth spilled out before she could stop it. "Because you looked like the kind of man who's never been surprised by anything in his life. And I wanted to see what would happen." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed him from intimidating tycoon to something far more dangerous, a man she might actually like. "Well," he said finally, "I certainly was surprised. And now I find myself curious about what else might surprise me about you." That night marked the beginning of what Olivia would later call her temporary insanity. What started as a mortifying mistake somehow evolved into a strange arrangement, dinner meetings where Ethan claimed to want her local perspective on his development plans. She told herself she was only accepting to advocate for the bookstore and other small businesses. But with each meeting, the line between business and pleasure blurred dangerously. Ethan Blackwood was nothing like she'd expected. Behind the ruthless businessman persona was a man who'd grown up in foster care, who'd built his empire from nothing, and who carried a worn copy of The Great Gatsby in his briefcase. A man who listened, really listened, when she spoke about the importance of community spaces like her family's store. You could make more money turning the whole complex into luxury condos, she argued during their third dinner, emboldened by excellent wine and his apparent interest in her opinions. I have enough money, he replied simply. What I don't have is enough good ideas. For 6 weeks, they existed in a strange limbo, not quite friends, definitely not lovers, but something electric and undefined. Olivia found herself looking forward to their meetings with an intensity that frightened her. She told herself it was just the thrill of intellectual sparring, the satisfaction of slowly convincing him to consider a mixed-use development that would preserve some of the existing businesses. But then came the night of the storm, a torrential downpour that flooded parts of the city, including the bookstore. She'd been alone, desperately moving inventory to higher shelves, when he appeared in the doorway, soaked to the skin. "What are you doing here?" she'd asked, stunned. "I saw the flood warnings for this area." He was already rolling up his sleeves, designer suit forgotten as he moved to help her. "I thought you might need help." They worked side by side for hours, saving most of the valuable stock. When the immediate danger had passed, they sat exhausted on the floor, surrounded by piles of books and the lingering smell of rain. "Why did you really come tonight?" she asked, finally voicing the question that had been haunting her for weeks. "Why are you spending all this time with me? Is this some kind of game to you?" His eyes, usually so guarded, were open and vulnerable in the dim emergency lighting. "Do you want the truth, Olivia?" "The truth is I haven't been able to stop thinking about that kiss since the moment it happened. And it terrifies me." "You? Terrified?" She laughed incredulously. "Of what?" "Of wanting something I can't control with spreadsheets and business plans." His hand found hers in the darkness. "Of wanting someone who sees right through me." That night changed everything. The kiss they shared among the rescued books wasn't impulsive or driven by a dare, it was inevitable, a culmination of weeks of tension and growing feelings neither had been willing to acknowledge. But morning brought reality crashing back. The local news reported that Blackwood Investments had finalized plans for the redevelopment, plans that would indeed demolish the existing structure, including her family's bookstore. The announcement included quotes from Ethan that had been given weeks ago, before their dinners, before the storm, before everything. Betrayed and heartbroken, Olivia refused his calls. She threw herself into organizing community resistance to the development, leveraging her newfound knowledge of Ethan's plans to rally support. For 2 weeks, she led protests, contacted media outlets, and created a social media campaign that quickly gained traction. When he finally confronted her, it was at a community meeting she'd organized. He stood at the back of the room, watching as she passionately addressed the crowd about the importance of preserving local businesses and community spaces. "You're using everything I told you against me," he said afterward, when the room had emptied and they were alone. "And you were using me to get insider information about the community's concerns," she fired back. "Was that the plan all along? Seduce the bookstore girl, get her to trust you, then bulldoze her family's legacy anyway?" Pain flashed across his face. "Is that really what you think of me?" "I don't know what to think anymore," she admitted, her anger giving way to exhaustion. "I just know that I can't separate my feelings for you from what's happening to my family's store. And I can't be with someone who doesn't understand why this matters so much." For a week, silence. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, exactly 2 months after that fateful kiss at the engagement party, Ethan walked into the bookstore with a thick folder under his arm. "New development plans," he said without preamble, placing them on the counter. "I'd like your opinion before they're finalized." Warily, she opened the folder. Inside were blueprints for a completely reimagined complex, one that preserved the historic facade of the building, created affordable spaces for existing businesses, and added a community arts center on the top floor. "The art center was my favorite part to design," he said quietly. "I remembered you mentioning your art degree, how you'd given it up to help your parents. I thought maybe you could run it." Olivia stared at him, speechless. I'm not perfect, Olivia. I've spent my life building walls and empires because it was safer than letting anyone close enough to hurt me. But you kissed me on a dare and somehow broke through every defense I had. He took a deep breath. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I'm just asking for a chance to show you that I can be the man you believed I was. It wasn't an instant happy ending. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But over the following months, as they worked together to bring the new development to life, something stronger than their initial attraction grew between them, a partnership based on mutual respect, shared vision, and eventually, love. 1 year after their first kiss, Ethan proposed in the newly renovated bookstore, surrounded by the community that had become important to them both. And when Olivia's first art exhibition opened in the community center she now directed, he stood proudly by her side, whispering, "You continue to surprise me every day." Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and real. A story about two people from different worlds who challenged each other to be better, who found strength in vulnerability, and who built something beautiful together, not just a building, but a life. Because sometimes, the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary journeys. And sometimes, a kiss that starts as a dare becomes the first chapter of the greatest love story you never expected to live. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content that explores the unexpected ways love finds us. Remember that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards, and that true connection often happens when we least expect it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time.